How to get excellent credit, the simplest plan ever, or at least I hope it lives up to the name, right? Try to pack as many practical steps in this video. And so our talk for today is I want to break down what a balanced credit profile seeks to accomplish. Establishing a credit baseline, I'm going to give you the exact metric that you want to pay attention to, the types of credits that you want to have in place for your profile. Is there such thing as too much credit? I'm going to dive into that because that is going to be something you want to pay attention to, especially as you start to maybe transition into the business credit world and then making the right choices based on your situation. So let's start out with what a balanced credit profile accomplishes. Out of the gate, this is going to build trust with financial institutions. This means that this is going to be a major marker that they're going to look at whenever they're making decisions. And so, simply put, if you have poor credit, it's going to be an easy decision. Hey, this is going to be a denial. If you have excellent credit, but taking it a step further, this file, meaning yours, they already have, let's say, a $5,000 credit line with us, and they happen to have $1,000 in their checking account. Well, guess what? The likelihood of that application getting approved is far more likely than the person with the poor credit. Duh, right? But it's why you're here, because we want to take it a step further. This is going to improve the overall credit structure, not just the score. The score is just a byproduct, or really just a symptom of what's happening at the root. And the root in this case is going to be your credit profile. And so the way that I want you to see this is kind of like a snapshot. But in this case, the snapshot that they're looking at, this is known as a positive scoring model signal. And so when your credit profile is properly lined up on the personal side, from age to utilization to the types of accounts that you have, that is going to be positive reinforcement. It's going to be a positive signal to the bank, to the credit union, to the underwriter that, hey, this is a file that we want to obviously approve, and this is a client that we want to bring in on. I want you to see anytime that you are applying for a credit line, not just, hey, this is capital that I'm getting, of course, right? That's what it is. But taking it from like another kind of like mental model that I want you to think of is you're going into business with this bank. You're going into a partnership with said credit union. And so you want to make sure that you present yourself to the best ability possible, which in this case is you're putting on a nice bow tie, you're putting on a nice three-piece suit on your credit profile so that when you walk in, you're going in for the ball and you're not getting turned down at the door. Number three is this is going to be cheaper money. I think a lot of people, especially in the business world, sleep on this, where they think that just because you have an LLC, an S corp, you think that you got yourself a virtual office address, and hey, I'm a low risk industry. I get it. You know the lingo. You've been watching the videos. I get it. But you're missing an important piece. An important piece is you're most likely going to be personally guaranteeing this debt, which means that you're going to have to co-sign on behalf of your business because maybe your business isn't yet able to stand on its own 2 feet, maybe for revenue reasons or for age reasons. So what happens to a lot of business owners is that they do everything right with the structuring, but they forget the personal credit structuring as well. Owner's credit is super important. Again, this is more so for my business owners. If you don't care about maybe the business side, then this next piece that I'm about to give you may not apply to you, but I'm going to say it anyways. This is going to help counteract some of the merchant cash advance offers that you get out there, which is super expensive money. Off the top of my head, a 50K, let's say, loan an advance, if we're getting technical here, at a 1.3, 1.4 factor rate, you're probably going to be paying upwards of right around $25,000, give or take. That's freaking expensive. And by the way, that's going to be within a 6 to 9 month window on daily draws or weekly draws. That's a terrible place to be as a business owner. You're going to help counteract some of the revenue-based stuff that you see out there, which is also expensive money and also hard money if you are either in construction or if you are in some type of real estate function, right? You're a real estate investor, fix and flips, long-term holds, short-term vacation rentals, whatever that is. You're going to help counteract some of the hard money that's out in the market that gets expensive quickly by simply having your credit profile structured properly. Remember, this is all about what a credit profile properly structured and well-balanced seeks to accomplish. And number four, This is going to incentivize financial responsibility. This means that you're able to manage a variety of credit responsibly, and this promotes overall financial health. Now, with that in mind, I want to give us a credit baseline. This is how the score ranges on the FICO. You go from 300 to 850. This is a personal credit score, not a business credit score, a personal credit score. You have Experian, you have TransUnion, and you have Equifax. Those are the three main business credit bureaus that are going to be placed together inside of, again, the FICO algorithm, and you're going to get a score from each of them. You could get a 500, hopefully you won't, but you might get a 500 from Experian, a 550 from TransUnion, and a 565 from Equifax. Those are all three different scores. Here's what's going to influence the score. Payment history is going to be at the top. That's how on time you've been making your payments. If you've been on time every time, then fantastic, you're at 100%. That's going to make up 35% of your total FICO score. Credit utilization or credit usage, that's how much you owe on, let's say, your limits. So let's say if your limits are $1,000 and you owe $100, then it's a 10% utilization. That's going to make up 30%. So if you see at the top payment history and credit utilization, those two alone are some of the biggest levers that you can pull on if you really wanted to crank on your credit score the fastest, just because it makes up 65% of your score. Next up at 15% is length of credit history. That's the total age of all of your accounts combined. 10% for new credits. And then we have types of credit is 10%. So this is a variation of credits. This is maybe revolving accounts, which is credit cards, personal lines of credit, and then maybe you have some type of installment loans in there. So that can be student loans, mortgages, that can even be auto loans. That's a good baseline to set. And so I want to give you a metric to aim for. Anything between 720 to right around 790 is what you want to aim for. Now, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get approved for anything. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best credit score possible, because we all know that 850 is the highest score possible. But the reason why I'm giving you 720 to 750 is that usually tends to be the sweet spot where we see the most approvals on the personal side and then also on the business side. The reason why I'm stopping at a 790 is because in all reality, anything past a 790, at that point, we have what we call kind of like diminishing returns. And so it's not the best use of time there. If you wanted to aim for 800, dude, by all means, go for it. We have clients 825, 830, 840. But they're not getting cheaper or more money with that 830, 840 compared to someone who's already at the 770, 780. So just kind of, again, take that for what it is with the big old grain of Himalayan salt that you want to take it for. 720, 790 tends to be that sweet spot. So now let's quickly run through the metrics of each of those components that makes up the credit score. Starting out with payment history, remember that makes up 35%. This is going to be important because, again, banks are going to look at how you've been making your payments, or have you been making your payments on time, how on time you've been, and over what period of time you've been making those payments on time. And so the metric that they look at is they're typically going to go back to the last 24 months to make sure that it's anything over 98%, then you're good. Anything under a 98%, honestly, they may not even touch your file depending on how many credit lines you have. If you have less than 5 credit lines and you're at 95% or higher or less, it's like that's looking bad, right? So you want to keep this as close as you can to 100% as possible. The older the late payment, the less impact it has on the credit profile. The newer the late payment, the more impact it has. I'll give you context. If you have, let's say, a 740 credit score and you have one late payment that just reported on your credit report this month, then you're probably going to drop anywhere between 50 to right around 110 points, give or take. Depending on how many other accounts you have on there, if it's less than 5, you're probably dropping around 75 points. That's a big drop, and that's going to either take a while to get it back up because you have to let it age, or you have to get that removed altogether. Next part of the baseline is credit utilization. This is the ratio of the credit card balances to credit limits that you have. Now, the way that this works is you take the total number of card balances and then you divide that by the total amount of credit limits. And I think we kind of did the math earlier, but I'll reinstate it again. If you have $1,000 worth of available credit for a credit line and you use up $100, then you're sitting at 10% utilization. If you have $1,000 in credit, total credit, but you use up $500, then you have a 50% utilization because you only have 50% available for use. Next up is length of credit history. This is going to be the total length for how long you've had all of the credit accounts that are active. Keyword there is active. Now, I want to give you a little pro tip here. If you have, let's say, an account that doesn't have the highest limit on there, and so we'll give context, let's say $700, but all of your other limits on your accounts on the credit cards are, let's say, $15,000, that's a big discrepancy, right? That's a big delta we have to make up. Don't close the account, even if it's an account that you're not using, if that age is over 5 years old. Now, some people say if it's over 2 years old, some people say if it's over 10 years old. I like to kind of land in the middle, and I say anything over 5 years old, that's gonna really dig into your credit profile, and it's gonna drop the age, especially if the oldest account that you have is the total age of your score, meaning 5 years total age, and then 5 years for your oldest account. That'll probably drop your credit age by about 3 years, give or take. And that puts your file from taking it from maybe like a 770, 780. It'll probably drop it to like a 680 or 690 if you're lucky. And so I would rather see, and I'll tell you kind of what I tell my clients whenever they're thinking about closing an account. If it's your oldest account and if it's over 5 years, even if you're not using it, you're either better off asking for a credit limit increase or continuing to, use the account just for the sake of keeping it active so that it doesn't get shut down, because it'll hurt your file more by not having it on there than just having it on there, even if you're not using it. Just a pro tip. You can do with that as you please. But that's just what we've seen based off of the files that we get on what tends to impact people's credit the most. Next is new credit. Remember, this is going to indicate the number of recently opened credit accounts and the number of recent inquiries given by a lender. Now, some key components to this is going to include credit accounts and loans. And so what a hard inquiry is, it pretty much gives permissible purpose to the lender, to the financial institution, that they're able to legally look at your credit report. That doesn't happen on the business side. It's a wild, wild west on the business side. Anyone can pull up a copy of your business credit profile as long as they make the payment. On the personal side, you have to give permission, which is obviously the little disclaimers that you click on that say, yes, you have authorization to pull my credit. Or if you go to a dealership, you sign, yes, you have authorization to pull my credit, and then kind of shop for a mortgage or shop for an auto loan, things of that nature. But not in the business credit world. Anyone can look it up on the business side. This only happens on the personal side. The hard inquiry is going to drop your score by about 2 to 3 points, give or take, if it's an approval. If you get the hard inquiry and then maybe you don't take the loan or you get denied, it'll be upwards of 3 to 5 points. Now, something that I always tell my clients is that you want to keep in mind the importance of how you're using your hard inquiries, because you can't just go crazy with it, especially when you start to venture into the business credit side. If you have more than 3 hard inquiries per credit bureau, you're going to have to wait for them to either come off, which is after 12 months is usually a good sign, or you have to wait to right around 6 months before you can go and apply for either personal or business credit lines. That's 1-1 the same, essentially. It's a 1-1 ratio for the most part we tend to see. So you want to spread out your applications to minimize the negative effects of you having too many hard inquiries too quickly. And then lastly, types of credit or the credit mix. This is going to refer to the variety of credit accounts that you have, such as credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, personal loans. Now, a breakdown of this is having a mix of different types of credit accounts is going to help benefit not just your score, but also your credit profile. The reason for this is because it's going to create variety. It's going to create, remember what we mentioned earlier, it's going to create financial responsibility, that you're able to take on different types of accounts and to have proper financial steward and responsibility over all of those accounts. So you now have access to revolving accounts, which are credit cards, but then you also maybe have installment credit, which are loans like auto loans, home loans, boat loans, jet ski loans, that you're making those payments on time. Banks like to see variety, especially as you start to venture out into different products. So if you want more of maybe a credit card type of products, then guess what? You got to kind of match it, right? It's like you get one in, you get one out. So you probably want to have more types of primary accounts added to your profile. And this translates really well as you start to venture in over to the business credit side, where if you have over 5 or 6 revolving business accounts and you've been making those payments on time, you're over that 730 threshold on the score wise, then that naturally has a nice natural progression into the business world, where now banks are going to see what's called comparable credit, and they're going to be able to lend out right around 3 to 7 times the amount that you would typically get on the personal side. But now you can get that over on the business side. But I want to tackle the elephant in the room, which is there such thing as too much credit? I find myself answering this, at least, I don't want to say once a week. That's probably a little overboard, but um, a couple times a month. I'll kind of leave it at that. I answer this a couple times a month with, clients when we're onboarding them, and people that are, we're potentially looking to bring on as clients. And the reason why I wanted to bring this to your attention is because I want to give you like a mental model to think through. Here's what I mean by that. I want you to figure out your end game goal. Like, figure out the end game. What are you looking to do? Are you just going at the credit for the heck of it, or do you have a plan in place? So that's like baseline first place that I want you to think through, right? So I'll give you kind of like the same, framework that I would give you if you were sitting in front of me, which you kind of are, right? Maybe you're watching me on the phone or on your laptop, but this would be essentially what I would tell you if we were working together. So figure that out first. The reason that's going to be important is because you want to find a sweet spot that's, right for you, and then you want to build from there. Don't just get a bunch of credit just because it's cool, because it's easy, because you saw it on YouTube, because you can get, approved for X amount of money in X amount of time. Get it because you actually have a plan for it, and get it because you know that it's going to benefit you in the long run. Don't just get it to get it. That's the first thing. Second thing that I want to say is diminishing returns. Is that a thing? Spoiler alert, this is going to be a little bit more on the business credit talk. So bear with me here if you're just coming in for the personal credit. I promise we're going to tie this up. If the purpose of you building out your personal credit so that you can transition into personally guaranteeing for your business, then anything past 120, I see the threshold right now is right around 90K to about 120. You're not going to move the needle much. It's actually going to be kind of like what it is with the personal credit, where once you get past 790 on the score, it's kind of like a diminishing return. At that point, 820, 830, it's just hoorah, I have an 800 plus, club credit score, but it's not going to get you cheaper money or more money. We're seeing the same thing here. So anything really past 120, you're not, and by 120, I mean total revolving accounts on the personal side, not including mortgages or auto loans. You're not going to get more business credit just because you have over 120. So right now we're seeing clients anywhere between 40K in personal credit lines to right around 90K in personal credit lines are going to get about the same as someone who maybe has that 120, 130 or more. Now, if that's the game that you want to play, where you want to have the most credit in your neighborhood because you want to show off how many, nice pieces of plastic you have, then by all means. But if your goal is just to be responsible, to get access to capital that you need, either on the personal and or on the business side, keep in mind, once you get to that, I say 90 threshold, you're good. Like you won the game. You're good, right? So I'll kind of leave it there. I won't beat a dead horse. So we're moving into the last piece of this training, making the right choices based on your situation. So I'm going to give you guys a couple different scenarios depending on where you land. First one is if your score is 620 or less, you got to clean it up ASAP. Now, you could be in a place right now where maybe utilization, I'll give you two scenarios that I tend to see, is maybe your credit utilization is a little bit higher. By higher, I mean over 70%. Everything else is lined up in your personal credit. So you don't have any collections, you don't have any charge-offs. It's just a personal utilization. Then obviously at that point, you got to bring that utilization down. One of the things that you can do, just bare bones, budget. I call it budget basics, which is just look at every single payment that's coming in and every single payment that's going out. Start setting yourself on auto pay. This is not the time to mess around and get a late payment, because if you have a high utilization and you get a late payment on top of that, you'll probably be in the 800s I'm sorry, you'll probably be in the 500s by next week. Not what you want, right? Pay down your utilization as fast as you can. Now, I want to speak and I'll give you an additional metric. Get that to under 20% as fast as you can. If your goal is to go back in for additional personal credit funding or business credit funding. Now, I want to speak to those of us that maybe we have a collection or two on there. You'll want to get that removed. There is no sense of having collections on your profile and then trying to go back in and apply for credit. You are literally spinning your wheels. It's like spending 20 minutes on the treadmill, aka applying for credit, and then you're going to a Chinese buffet right afterwards to consume all of those calories back and some. You're not just going to be in the same spot. You're actually going to be worse off because you're going to end up gaining weight if your goal is to lose weight. And so in this case, you'll want to work on getting those items removed, not just a pay to settle, because that doesn't really move the needle much for you. You either want to get a pay for deletes, you want to hire a professional to get it removed for you, or you want to do this yourself. Then you want to go into adding new credit lines once that item is removed. The biggest impact that your score is going to have, the biggest jump you're going to see, is when a negative is removed, you offset it and you counteract it immediately when you add a positive trade line. This can be either an authorized user, but again, the threshold there is no more than 3, and a primary account. Now, primary, you can have as many as you want, but again, that's how you want to counteract that, because if you remove, let's say right now, a negative off their collection comes off, you're at 620, and then immediately you add a positive, you'll be in that 680, 690, even 700 range literally by next month. Número dos is if your score is in between 620 to 700. So no less than 620 at this point. This is, again, usually a credit utilization issue. So I would still challenge you to track every single dollar coming in and every single dollar going out. There's really 2 ways to pay this debt down. Number one is going to be what we call kind of like the debt snowball. Dave Ramsey. I know a lot of people don't like Dave Ramsey. I like Dave Ramsey. I agree with about 95% of stuff that he says. I think one of those is people misuse their funds and they don't properly allocate. This happens both on the personal front and on the business front. And so you want to properly assign an assignment to every single dollar that you have. And so one of the things that you can do is pick up the baby step or pick up the snowball method, which is going to be to pay off the smallest debt first, because that's going to give you a nice little dopamine hit, which is then going to have you segue into the next debt, which is going to help you ultimately kind of, you're getting positive feedback a lot faster. So ultimately, the whole point of that, right? We're habitual creatures. You want to get feedback loops as fast as you can. The second way that you can do this is known as maybe more of a debt avalanche approach, which you are going to pay down the credit limits with the highest interest on there, because that's the most expensive money. That's going to clear up the most overhead on your balance sheets. You can then use the remaining funds to pay off the smaller balances. So those are really the 2 approaches that I would see anyone that has between a 620 to a 700. And then lastly, if you, my friend, have between a 700 to a 740, I would push you, and this is for all of us, but especially you're like right there. I would push you to get to that 750 to 790 threshold as fast as you can, because that's really where the floodgates open. That's where you start getting the pre-approval offers on the personal or on the business side. That's when you can start going out for some nice juicy rounds of business credit that you can then use to scale your business with, if that's your end game. If not, if you just want to, again, maybe have access to cheaper money to purchase a home, or to start investing in real estate, or to purchase vehicles, then this is going to be for you as well. Look at the report as a whole, not just as a score. I probably should have mentioned this for all of us, but especially here, look at the report as a whole, not just as a score. It's easy to get kind of blindsided when you get into the 700 club, because you're like, I made it. The proverbial 700 club. I'm here. I'm out. I'm at the top of the mountain. So don't get too carried away with where the score is. You want to make sure that there's some key bench metrics that are healthy on your report. Credit usage on the revolving side is under 30%. And I want you to remember this, the 5-5-5 rule, which is you want to ultimately work your way into having at least 5+ years of credit history. If you're not there yet, start working there. 5+ primary accounts, mainly revolving, and these are going to be bank issued cards, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, your local credit union, Chase, Capital One, not store cards. Store cards don't count for this. You want 5 primary bank issued credit lines, again, on the revolving side. And you want to have an average of at least 5K per account, give or take. Some accounts are going to be 20, some accounts are going to be 3, some accounts are going to be, 2,000. You want to have an average of 5K per account with a squeaky clean file. No late payments, no collections, no charge offs. Just everything is just Gucci. It's ready to go. That right there is going to open up the doors for you. For again, if you plan on co-signing on behalf of your business as a responsible business owner, so you can get access to additional capital, or again, if you just want to be, a value providing citizen that is doing good in the world, and they are being responsible with their debts and they're properly using credit for what it should be, which is to again be used responsibly. So there you have it. That is essentially how you would want to attack your credit situation based off of where you're at. If you found value in this video, consider sharing it with someone that you think is in dire need of some helpful credit content. I hope we did a good job on relaying some simple actionable items that you can take or steps that you can take to improve your credit. If we did, give us a thumbs up. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.